Our jersey sales were up 1,193%. Like, that is unprecedented. If you give people something to believe in, that's probably one of the best gifts you could receive. And we had over 1 billion views to our digital content. 1 billion views.
What is a hidden gem in Indiana? From South Bend to Evansville and everywhere in between, this is Get In, the show focused on the Hoosier State and the incredible stories happening here today. I'm Nate Spangle, founder of Get Indiana, and I will be your host for today's conversation. Today I'm joined by Allison Barber, former president and COO of the Indiana Fever. She is a leader in women's sports, recognized for her commitment to empowering female athletes. She has played a primary role in revitalizing the Fever franchise from behind the scenes. She just transitioned from her role with the Fever into her next chapter, where she will serve as board chair and advisor for the Marvella Project, an initiative aimed at uplifting girls and women in Indiana through sports. She's also the CEO of her own company, To The Hoop Strategies, a consulting company focused on brand building. Today we're going to be talking about the rise of women's sports in Indiana and beyond, the Marvella Project and the impact they're making across the state, and the future of the Indiana Fever. Allison, welcome to Get In.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
I'm so pumped to have this conversation. I was happy that the intro came through and we were able to get you on in very timely manner, right? Like, season just wrapped up with the Fever, and not only is there tons of excitement there, but there's also tons of excitement about what you're transitioning into and going to be working on next. So I'm super excited to dive into it.
Thanks. I'm glad to be here. It is an exciting time for girls and women in sports, especially in the state of Indiana, because we're all in on the opportunity that sports can bring to make society actually better.
Oh my gosh, yes. Because there's a bunch of new developments. Like, not only are the Fever like the hottest team, the absolute hottest team in, I would say, women's sports, but also the Indiana Ignite or the Indianapolis Ignite.
Indy Ignite.
The Indy Ignite are coming, which is going to be our professional volleyball team. They're going to be the 7th, 8th team,
That's
something
right.
like that.
I think that's right.
They're sub 10. I'm super pumped. They're going to be up on the north side of Indianapolis, and they kick off
January.
That's super exciting.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, I have the expert in all things women's sports here. But before we dive into what you're doing with the Marvella Project and kind of these fun new adventure you're jumping into, we got to start with the Fever,
Let's
right?
do it.
Talk to me about, obviously, first question, the Caitlin Clark effect, right? We got to start there. We're going to give the softballs up early. How crazy was this season versus the seasons past?
It was crazy in all the good ways. So Caitlin Clark is an amazing person, first and foremost. You know, all the things that we appreciate about Hoosiers, she brought with her from Indiana. So generous and kind. And just watching Caitlin off the court has been as much of a pleasure for me as watching her on the court, as you see her engage with kids and really giving herself to the future of sports for girls. And that's what she's dedicated to. So Caitlin, the person, is just amazing, and we're honored and humbled that she's now a Hoosier, and we're thrilled to have her here on the court. You know, her game is second to none in the way that she plays, and she's surrounded by several great talented athletes in Indiana Fever. So we've been fortunate to attract some really great talented folks, women that now complement Caitlin's game. It's fun to watch, isn't it?
And they all make each other better, right? Like, this team was super fun to watch. It took a little bit to get going, I feel like, growing pains, and especially, when Caitlin, coming from a national championship run, rolling directly into a full WNBA season. That's crazy. Yeah. I was like, I saw her at the Colts game maybe not too long ago, and I was like, someone needs to get her a beverage and let her just hang out and chill for a little bit.
Yeah.
Well, talk to me. Are there stats to measure just how wild this season was? I know the attendance for Fever games was off the charts, but when you guys were dissecting just how big of an impact and how awesome of a run this past season was, what were you using to measure there?
So we do a few things. On the business side, we can measure everything from ticket sales to fan engagement to merchandise sales. On the basketball side, we're going to measure wins and losses, but also just impact and progression of the game. So, I give a lot of credit to our head coach, Christy Sides, and her team that put together a really good, brand new, young Fever basketball team. Our hope, over the last 3 years, we had a plan that said this year, according to our plan, this year we would be in the playoffs. And the 8 top teams go into the playoffs. If our coach Sides could get us into the playoffs at spot 8, that would be success. She got us in at 6. And so that was success on the basketball side, and we're really proud of the work they did. It took time to gel and figure that out. That's not, I come from business and nonprofit world, same thing happens in corporate America. It takes you a while to figure out how to play to each other's strengths.
Yeah, it's like you get that Harvard MBA in there, and it's not like all of a sudden, all right, our profit and loss is
That's
fixed, right?
That's
It's
right.
like it takes a little time to get.
Of course.
And it's like I feel like culture wise, you don't want to be the 22-year-old coming in there and, well, this is how we did things at Iowa. Like now we're going to change everything. It's like, no, you got to like, you build the chemistry within the team.
That's right. That's right. And we had a veteran like Kelsey Mitchell, and then we had Lexi Hall, and then Aaliyah Boston. So we've had people who had played at the highest levels in college. They could relate to where Caitlin was coming from, and therefore I think all we had to do was give them a minute to connect with each other, and they did, and it showed on the court. But to your question about metrics, we look at on the business side, our jersey sales were up 1,193%. Like that is unprecedented.
And okay, obviously probably like largely fueled by Caitlin's jersey, but like did more Leah Boston jerseys sell this year? Did more Erica Wheeler? Like I love
right.
I know a little bit. I went to the season opener.
Great.
And I was like, okay, like obviously you see like this is a team that is new to playing with each other, but it was super cool to see them all come together and like really figure and hit their stride through the stretch there.
Yeah, but let's unpack what you're talking about. It was the impact. It's unprecedented. The Caitlin Clark effect is real, and we're thrilled about it. But it brought visibility to the whole team of the Fever and to the WNBA. But if we just want to keep it in Indiana, we look at ticket sales sold out every night, over 17,000 fans in our games at home. But even something as simple as our terrific mascot, Freddie Fever, his appearance requests went up 150% this season. So you talk about the Fever, the team, which is what we've been working on. 5 years ago when I got this job, we put together a strategy, said commit, compete, and contribute. Those 3 C's will drive us to a championship culture. I couldn't guarantee a championship because that's not my job, but I could help create a culture that would lead to a championship win. So you've got to have the culture before you can have the win.
Did you come in? Was it right after or before? Didn't they have a championship run back in like 2012?
Well, they won in 2012, yes, and then yes, they did. And I came in 2019.
Okay,
so
yeah,
it had been a while
after that. Because that was my freshman year of college.
Okay.
And one of my buddies, his older brother worked for like Learfield or whatever, and they had like tickets to the game. And so we went to catch one of the games within the championship. It was a home game, and it was our first, like, we were at the WNBA finals.
Yeah.
And I was like, whoa, man, college is sweet. Like, you just get to, like, because I went to DePaul, so we, like, drove the 50 minutes into Indianapolis, and it was wild. I do believe that, because did Minnesota win the whole thing in Indianapolis?
I think that's right.
I think I was at that, and it was like, oh, that's tough.
that's right.
But it's cool to see the whole, like, 2015, make it to the championship, then, like, some dog days in there, and then now kind of like a revitalization.
It's like any business model. You hit your peak, and then people retire, coaches retire, players retire. So then you just go into rebuild mode, which is not unusual if you come out of a business, background. And really in sports, it happens all the time. And so that was the wave we had to ride, and we had this wonderful group of fans who have been with the Fever all 25 seasons, many of them, and the new fans that said, let's come around this franchise and believe in them and be patient. And that's what they were. And so they rode the wave with us, and I'm very grateful to all of our fans.
Yeah. What were season ticket sales? Did they increase this year?
Oh, yes. Well, when Caitlin announced that she was coming out into the draft on a Thursday afternoon, from that time to Sunday night, we had over 6,000 phone calls, people wanting to buy season tickets.
How many season tickets do you offer?
Well, we had to get creative.
So we had there were half seasons and like other stuff like that.
Packages. So we only sold full seasons, and then once we got all those folks accommodated, then we sold half seasons. So we had to adapt. But our company, Pacer Sports and Entertainment, was ready for it, and that's the beauty of our company, working both Pacers and Fever. When something like this happened, we had a whole team around us to support and to be responsive to our fans.
When did it get on the radar? Like what board meeting or wherever you guys sitting when you're like, hey, we could get Caitlin Clark? Like when did that like moment kind of like click?
Well, we knew our odds were good going into the draft lottery in December, but you don't know until you know. And then we knew we got the first pick in December, but we didn't know. So that's December. And the players in college don't have to declare until after their college season ends. So that could be anywhere between March and April. And so we waited, and Caitlin decided to announce before her season ended, and that's when it was all systems go.
And she kind of knew, right? Like, she knew that she'd be going to Indianapolis. So it's like,
Yes.
let's say she just didn't vibe. She's like, no, I want to be in LA or I want to be in New York. Like, she could have been like, nah, I'm gonna take my NIL
That's
money.
right.
I'm gonna play another year
That's
in
right.
Iowa. Like, maybe win the national championship.
Yes.
So I think that speaks like volumes to the Fever organization.
Yes.
Because I mean, you've seen it before. Like Eli Manning, right? Back in the day, was like, nah, I don't want to play there. Like, I'm just not going to do it, right? So I think that does speak a ton to your guys' organization and the Fever organization as a whole. That
Good.
like a blue chip. I don't want to say once in a lifetime, because I hope that more of these like come. Like, there's other women coming up that are going to be like bigger and better than Caitlin Clark, right? But an awesome player says like, no, I want to go to Indy and I want to build something special in Indiana.
I think that's right. And it's a credit to, I hope, and I accept your compliment, I think it is a credit to the Fever franchise. I think it's a credit to Pacer Sports and Entertainment, but in addition to that, it's a credit to our city. And this was a place that Caitlin had spent time playing in the Big Ten tournament, and she'd been here. She had an understanding of it. So I think our city showed up in a way that would make it attractive to somebody, especially from Iowa, to say this is a place where you'll be comfortable. And so far, so good.
What was the most unexpected change this past Fever season? Like, obviously you knew ticket sales and merch sales and all those things were going to go up, but like, what was something that shocked you? Like, I didn't expect this to happen.
So there are a couple of things. One, on our away games, I didn't expect they would sell out in the ways that they did. We were in Atlanta, and the Atlanta WNBA team plays in a small venue, so they rented out their NBA venue because of the crowd size. So they sold 17,000 tickets, which is their capacity. And then on top of that, they sold 1,000 standing room only. And I remember walking into the arena and looking up. So the arena was jam-packed, every seat sold. And then I looked up at the third, I think it was the third tier, and there were people looking down at the tops of our heads that paid standing room only seats to be there that night. That was shocking to me, and I didn't see that coming. At our second to last home game, our cameras were panning the crowd, and this gentleman was holding up a sign, and he said, it's my 91st birthday, and I wanted to see Caitlin Clark play. And so you expect to see all the little kids. I mean, that is, and which is what we love, because that's the inspiration of the next generation. But to see, a 6-year-old and a 91-year-old there for the same reason, those are the things that make you stop and pause and say, this is something unique and special.
Oh, I love it. I think it's so cool and so unifying. Like, truly, like, again, one of my best friends, he's a farmer up in northern Indiana, and he's never come to like a Pacers game, never been to a Colts game, I don't think. And he's texting me like, yo, we have to make sure. Like, he came down for a Fever game this year.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's wild. Like,
Yes.
I can't get him to come down on my birthday, and he wants to come down and watch Caitlin Clark. So, like, whatever that is. Thanks, Andrew.
Yes. You need a different friend.
Yeah, I guess so. So when you think back to this past season, what's been your proudest moment? Maybe not just this season, but just through your 5 years with the Fever, what was your proudest moment?
Keeping our fans engaged. That's a gift of time and resources that people in the city and state have generously given to our franchise. The fact that you could go through some down years, some amazing players, and Tamika Catching retires, and she was beloved for all good reasons.
And she's still crushing it in the city.
is.
Like, she's doing big stuff. I actually just popped into Tease Me.
Oh, good.
The little
Yes.
I'd never had tea
shop.
before.
Okay.
But it was actually Olivia West.
Uh-huh.
She invited me. We were like
good.
catching up or whatever, and she was
good.
like, "You got to come check this place out." And I was like, "Oh, like I'll have my first cup of tea." And
Good for you.
It was great.
Did you go hot or cold?
I went hot.
Okay.
Because I'm a coffee guy, like warm, hot coffee. It was different.
Yes.
But like all of a sudden, like the person behind the counter like opens this container, and she's like, "Yeah, smell it." And I was like, okay. And I was like,
They fan it
yeah,
to
they
you.
waft it to
Yes,
you, and I was
exactly.
like, "Oh, absolutely, let's go." So that's great. But like, she's
But
beloved.
Tamika retires, and so you might imagine a scenario where the fans drop off when a Tamika retires, or when the team is struggling to rebuild. But our fans didn't drop off. There was a core group of fans that kept believing. They stayed optimistic. They were always the voice in my head that says, "This will get better. You'll all will figure this out, and we're here for you." So when I look back at that and say, what's a great takeaway? it's the takeaway that I've always believed to be true. If you give people something to believe in, even if you can't deliver on your results immediately, but they believe in you or your promise or your product, and they come alongside you, that's probably one of the best gifts you could receive.
Oh, I love that. And it's paying off, right? Like the future is so bright for the Fever organization. And I mean, they're going to go on and sans you, right? Because we have new fun adventures that we're going on, but they're going to do great things. And I'm super excited for next season.
I don't know how I feel about sans you as a way to describe that.
Fair.
Sans you, Allison, you're out of here.
Well, not out of here, but like you're going on. There's a new opportunity that's arise that you're super excited to take on, and I'm super excited to talk about it. So walk us through what the Marvella Project is.
We just launched 2 weeks ago the Marvella Project. First of all, it is the country's first, so this has never been done in the nation. It's the country's first girls' sport and leadership complex for girls 12th grade and under. And we're going to build it up by Fair Oaks Farms. We're very excited about that location. It's named Marvella after Senator Birch Bayy's first wife, Marvella Bayh, who could not get into college because there was no Title IX. So Title IX, first and foremost, was for financial aid, so girls could go to college with aid. And she couldn't go. And so part of her journey inspired his journey to write Title IX, which opened up all the doors for girls to go to college and to play sports and get scholarships. So as a tribute to Marvella, we've named this the Marvella the Marvella Project. And because Indiana is the birthplace of Title IX, it all aligns perfectly. So imagine a facility built for girls where they can come and we'll have a health and mental health and wellness center, an athletic center, fitness training, nutrition training, basketball, volleyball, soccer, tennis, field hockey, flag football, all of the sports. So girls will come for weekends of tournaments and camps and clinics. And then we'll build out this curriculum of year-round programming for girls, because what we believe is what we know the research demonstrates. If girls play sports, they have this trajectory of a career success that's second to none. So according to Ernst & Young, 92% of women in C-suite jobs played sports.
No, 92?
92%.
I can believe that.
Yes, why?
I can really believe that. You know, getting to the top, like being in the C-suite is competitive.
Yes.
Like you have to you have to be the first one in, the last one to leave, like put in the extra work. And I do think that that athletes just have that mentality. Mm-hmm. And there is I think about like women's sports, specifically around like women's soccer players, volleyball players, and basketball players. Not to knock any of their sports, but I'm just thinking of like personal examples. Like they are tough, hard-nosed, and like are out to compete.
Yes, and they know how to play team ball, which is what you need to do in corporate America to be successful. So sometimes you've got the ball and you're making the shot, and sometimes you've got the ball and you're making the pass. Both are important skill sets, and they translate to corporate America or any business perfectly. And so we're looking at the Marvella Project of saying we can do so much more for girls in training them to be successful mentally, physically, emotionally, and do it through this platform of sports.
And what's the nearest big city to Fair Oaks Farms?
Well, you're 100 miles north of Indy and 70 miles south of Chicago. And so you're right on the path between the two big cities. So that's why we put it there, so that we can attract from all over Indiana and Illinois.
And the thought would be it's like, week-long summer camp or something like that, or like weekend getaway?
Both. Weekend getaways, weekend tournaments. We like partnering up there with Fair Oaks Farms, because if you think about all the kids who are in travel ball, their families go with them, and now all of a sudden we're offering something for the female athletes to compete. And then also the Fair Oaks Farm is right there, and they have activities for families with other children to be involved. So it's kind of a family-friendly opportunity.
Interesting. I love it. I think it's super, super cool. How did this get on your radar? And like, what got you involved? Like, was this from the beginning? You were like, whose idea? And how did this come to life?
Glenn Tilley from GT Sports and his team have been working on this concept for 2 years. A few weeks ago, they were given the grant from the state of Indiana, a READY grant, because they've been doing this work behind the scenes, just getting all the pieces in place. 4 weeks ago, Tamika Catchings, who is an advisor to this team, asked me if I would take a meeting with them to learn more about it. And in that meeting, when I learned about it, similar to how you responded, this is important and the time is right, which really goes back to your first questions about women in sports and the Fever and being this visible team now. it gives us the opportunity to do more if we take it. And so we're taking it.
Yeah, and I mean, it has to be obviously the impact of it to leave the Fever when they're like I feel like it's just beginning to scratch the surface of like all the success and the cool things that are coming there. Like that just kind of shows how big this opportunity is.
Yes.
And like to make a national global impact to women in sports, I think that is amazing.
Yeah.
So when you think about like what this is going to look like for families, like walk me through like what it's like for let's say fifth grade basketball team comes to it's going to be Marvella is what you're going to call it. Comes to Marvella, like walk me through what that's going to feel like.
So they'll come to this state-of-the-art facility, which we're really proud of. They'll go through classroom work, curriculum work around mental health, physical health. We have a full kitchen. We'll teach cooking classes about if you want to be a successful human and athlete, what are you putting in your body? And so we'll have nutrition bars and clinics and that piece for girls. And then they'll go into the training center where we'll have this beautiful gym for athletic training, working out with trainers so that they're working. At 5th grade, you need to work out differently than you do at 7th grade and 9th grade. And so that training piece as well, all of that will happen mostly through our mental and wellness centers. And then they'll compete. And so they'll go depending on the sport, we'll have tournaments, we'll have clinics. We'll have coaches in to teach students and girls how to play different sports. So it will be all of these things, and then anchored around these great tournaments and championships.
Is there like going to be like overnight accommodations, like hotel type, like dorms, or like what's going on there?
They have a hotel already built there, and part of our model will be to build a second hotel and more restaurants so that it's awesome. Either drivable from Crown Point. I'm from the region, so I know that location great. You can drive down from Cherville, Maryville, Crown Point. All of those
what's
places.
Like the closest like Indiana City to Fair Oaks Farms?
Well, so you're right by Jasper County and Newton County. Okay. So you're really moving your way up toward that Maryville, Cherville, Crown Point area.
What's the economic impact that area is going to see from this complex?
Yeah, we're excited about that too. We haven't modeled all of the economic impact except for the fact that as we build, we've got it in 3 phases of how the build's going to happen. What we do know is that our model shows that we'll hire 1,000 new employees just to support the Marvella Project. So 1,000 new jobs with this project, which is a great boost to the community.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. 1,000? That's wild.
Yes.
Well, talk to me about women's sports and the opportunity that Indiana has to really like be the capital. Like obviously, with the Fever's success and the Indy Ignite coming in, like the pieces are all there, and it's like kind of our job to arrange them all and build this masterpiece. But talk to me about this opportunity that Indiana has.
It's like any good success story. I told somebody I felt like we've been writing code in our basement for 5 years, and our IPO just hit. Everything looks like an overnight success, which it never is. But we've put all of these pieces in place in our city. So whether it was attracting the NCAA years ago, it's the Fever franchise that's 25 seasons old. Indiana Sports Corp has just put out their strategic plan. One of their pillars is to make Indiana the headquarters for women's sports. And so all of these bites at the apple of success, every little piece will pay off in big ways for our city and our state. But the momentum, it all has to happen in this rhythm. It's the flywheel of what happens first and how do we build on each thing. And so while we welcomed, Aaliyah Boston last year as our first draft pick, and the momentum started to shift for the Fever, and then we welcomed Caitlin Clark, and then more momentum happened. All of those things, if they happened independently, would be terrific. But the fact that they're happening in collaboration with our business, our city, our nonprofits, sports corp, everybody identifying the power of women in sports and how can Indiana be that headquarters. All of those things are coming together just at the right time.
JC Hart Company is your answer to navigating the apartment rental journey. With almost 50 years of creating enjoyable living experiences in Indiana, you'll be sure to find your new home sweet home. You're going to find 30 communities in the best areas Indiana has to offer. Hamilton County, downtown Indy, Bloomington, just to name a few, along with 5 brand new luxury communities. Visit homeisjchart.com/Nate to find their list of locations and reach out to one of their many dedicated leasing agents for a personalized tour. Tell them Nate sent you and they're going to take good care of you. Looking for a career in property management? You'll also find a list of open positions on their website, along with all the reasons why JC Hart is named one of Indiana's best places to work. Want a sneak peek into life as a JC Hart resident or associate? Be sure to check them out on Instagram at homeisjchart or visit homeisjchart.com/Nate. One more time, home is JC Hart. And what can the community at large do to support you at the Marvella Project and to support just women's sports in general, not only in Indiana, but beyond as well?
There are three things I think people can do. One, go to the games. So you talked about Indy Ignite is starting in January. It's an inaugural team, professional volleyball up at the new Fishers facility. Let's go. Let's show up. Let's support and buy tickets because that builds that momentum as well. Keep coming to the Fever game. Follow all these teams on social media. That's important too.
What was the increase of social media followers for the Fever this year?
Well, it's interesting. We had, there are so many metrics around that. The one that I just was shocked by, I shouldn't be surprised by anything this season, but we have 40 games. So we're about half the size of an NBA league season wide. And we had over 1 billion views to our digital content, 1 billion views. And so an NBA team at the height of their season doing a great job. I think some of the numbers are around 480 million for an NBA team. And we were at over 1 billion.
No way. I mean, I can believe it. It was just
You
like
can?
much.
It's mind-boggling, isn't it?
I just think anything that involved the Fever and Caitlin Clark was just must-see content, right? I remember I watched 3 minutes of them at the state fair or something like that. I was oh my gosh, I had that sweet corn. That was me. I was there. I loved it.
I loved it.
I don't know. I can't imagine. That is wild to put in perspective against a peak NBA team, to over double that.
Yes.
But again,
in half the amount of time. Half of the amount of time.
Yeah. Well, I had someone from WTHR on 2 weeks ago, and we talked about I think that with the rise and the popularity of the WNBA, they kind of need to evaluate schedules and for the Fever not to get to host a playoff game, right? That's tough.
Yes.
We were talking about how awesome it would have been for the city. You bring the Fever back in a must-win game, the city would have shown out for that.
That's right.
And that's a tough one for Gainbridge not to get to do that. But I think they are making steps. Obviously, nothing moves as fast as you want it to, but charter flights and all these different steps that are taking.
Right.
It's got to keep the foot on the gas there. But that was kind of our big takeaway was man, I wish that they could host a playoff game and there were more Fever games to see.
Yeah, and that'll come. I mean, they will make those changes and adapt and adjust. It's a lot to change models that have been around for a long time, but I think we're well on our way.
Yeah, and when you think about the Marvella Project and the impact it's gonna talk to me about what the vision would be 5 or 7 years down the road, 10 years down the road. What does this look like for Indiana?
Our focus, first and foremost, is that every girl will be able to participate in Marvella Project. So part of our nonprofit work will be to raise money for scholarships. We are so dogged about the fact that sports is the great platform for girls to develop and succeed, that we want to make sure every girl who wants to be a part of it can be a part of it. But our modeling, we're expecting that we'll probably from the time we start and we finish the build, the first few years, by year 6, we model that we'll have over 400,000 girls going through our programs.
Gosh, that's awesome.
Yes.
Holy smokes.
It's life-changing.
And is there anything like this to compare it to?
No.
No?
Not for girls.
That's so okay. So is there a boys analog?
They have sports clinics around the country where boys and girls can compete and play their tournaments. Those things exist, but nothing similar to this. That's just for girls, with scholarship money, funded with all the sports. So you might find a basketball clinic or a soccer, but we're all in.
I love it. I think it's so impactful, and it's just serendipity and all the things coming at the right time. Aaliyah Boston last year. Caitlin Clark this year, Fever, the Ignite coming, all of these dominoes seem to just be positioned at the right place at the right time to just make a huge impact in women's sports.
WNBA All-Star will be here in July. So all of these things it's that flywheel, that Harvard business, if you go to Harvard that you mentioned, that's what they teach you about is this flywheel of one thing leads to the next. The challenge for leaders is how do you maximize the momentum? So you don't sit back and say, oh, great, we've had all these great ticket sales. It's how do you broaden this conversation? How do you take advantage of what seems to be this energy throughout the country to say, let's learn more, support more, let's learn, let's really push into and lean into girls' sports.
Well, and I do want to dive into something you talked about a little bit ago that I did not know. So Indiana is the home or the founding of Title IX.
Yes.
That started here. I don't know how well versed you are in this, but I'd love to just know a little bit more about that story and Marvella and how that all came to be.
So in 1970, leading into 1970, there were some women that were really pushing, and the credit really goes to, part of the credit goes to a professor at the University of Maryland. And she was an associate professor, and she kept applying to be a full professor at the university, and she didn't get the job. Didn't get the job. And finally, one of her deans said, you know, you're too outspoken to get the job. And it made her mad. Bernice is her name. And so she started fighting for women to have equal opportunity. And she lobbied Congress, and she got a congresswoman from Hawaii to get involved in it. And so they went and met with Birch Bayh, who was Indiana senator at the time. And, you know, they just kept working together to figure out, how do we level the playing field for women? And he, you know, was courageous enough to put pen to paper, and he wrote the bill, the Title IX, and it said that it's 37 words long. It talks about how no institution that's getting federal funding can discriminate against women for their pursuit of education and other activities. And those words are important, and other activities. And so Senator Bayh pushed forward, and he, you know, sponsored the legislation, Title IX, which then opened all the doors. It took a while to adapt and for people to believe that it was a thing they had to follow. And so there's been some issues along the way, but over the years, it meant that girls could go to college and get financial aid, and that they could qualify for scholarships in sports.
This is in 1970? Like 1970. That's like 50 years ago. Like,
Yes.
It just seems like not real to
I
me,
know.
which is crazy.
Yes.
Like, to me, it's like it's a no-brainer, right? It's like, you know, equality, all these
Sure.
things that are just like, for someone who's 27, it's like,
Yeah.
oh, that's just the right thing to do.
Sure.
Like, that's wild that was like an out there idea 54 years ago, right?
Like, how did that not exist prior to that? But, you know.
And so what have been like the big milestones along that, right? So the first one was like getting scholarships so people like Marvella could go to college. But what other like athletic scholarships and things like that?
And it took time for the athletic departments to accept the fact that they had to scholarship female athletes. And so there was a lot of work that people had to keep doing, because they didn't want to have to do it, because those weren't necessarily the sports making money for the college.
When did the women's NCAA tournament, like basketball or anything like that, like when did that like start to be a thing?
That I don't know.
No, okay. But so at the time there are women's basketball teams across the country, but they just were
no
non-scholarship.
That's right. Yes, that's
Oh,
right.
wow.
That's right. So, you know, Billie Jean King talks about how she loved Birch Bayh for these words and other activities. 3 words that he wrote in Title IX, because he wasn't writing it necessarily thinking about sports scholarship, but he just thought there must be more that girls could be able to participate in if somebody made the space for that. So financial aid and other activities is how then people like Billie Jean King and other trailblazers said that means sports. And so that's how they pushed hard for scholarships.
Well, when you think back, I'm guessing you were an athlete.
I played tennis and softball in college.
When you think back to your time, where'd you go to school?
Tennessee Temple in Chattanooga.
Ooh. What impact did sports have on you, whether it was growing up, and what impacts do you see sports having on young women across the country, the world?
Yeah, well, my real sport that I love is basketball, and I played that in my driveway like every good Hoosier. But, you know, I'll tell you what, basketball actually, according to research, is the #1 sport to develop psychological well-being. So wrestling is the #1 sport to develop personal discipline. So they kind of think about these sports.
What if I
in
told
this
you I
way.
was a wrestling coach? I'm the varsity coach here at
So
Bishop
does that
Chatard.
make sense to you?
Yes, because
Personal
it's hard.
discipline.
I always say, to the guy, like, it's not, the process is not fun, but like, the product is fun.
Yes. But you would think about that as a wrestler, personal discipline, because it's all on you. When you're on that mat, it's you, right?
Yeah, and personal discipline is also like, whether here, there, in between, it's like, you know, you have to make the weight class. Like, it starts before you even like get on the mat, right? And it's
Yes.
like, you take a high school boy that's like used to, you know, picking out all the time or whatever, and it's like, hey, just so you know, when you wake up tomorrow, it's like you have to weigh 120 on the dot or less. You can't weigh 120.1 or you can't compete.
Yes. Yeah. No, I've seen too many wrestlers spitting in a cup on the bus on the way to the thing.
Yeah,
just to make
that's
sure.
a thing. That's
I
a
know.
thing. Okay, so
But your
personal
question
discipline
is what it makes, right?
Yeah.
What does sports do? And so it really, if you break it down, my first career in Indiana was a first grade school teacher. And so I come to the Marvella Project with that academic background of saying there are certain things that you have to build into children to be successful. It's our job and our responsibility. And confidence is a big piece of that. Sports can be a platform to build in confidence. And I love the game of basketball because you don't need you can practice basketball, and all you need is a ball in your driveway, in your basement, and you can get better at dribbling. You can get better at moving with the ball. Like, there are all these things that build confidence for kids. And you can get better at shooting. Yeah, I mean, that really matters.
Like winning a game of pig, you know, it's like you never have to like have someone in your face, like blocking your shot or whatever. And it's like the ball goes in and you're like, oh, I still got it. Like, let's go.
Well, you know, that's funny you're talking about that, because it actually releases dopamine. And if you're sitting in your office and you sketch something on a piece of paper and you're going to go throw it away, if you crinkle that paper, now I've known you for 21 minutes, but I'm guessing when you throw that paper in the trash, you probably shoot it at the trash can. You probably don't get up, walk over, and you're
absolutely.
a shooter, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, I could tell.
Even if I have to go chase it down afterwards.
And shoot it again.
Yes.
Because when it goes in, dopamine is released in your brain, and it is a satisfying and good feeling. And so every time a kid can put a ball through the hoop, we're doing something good for their brain.
Okay, I want to ask you, I have an interesting question then. So what do you think about, like, so I'll just like give my stance first, right? I'm like a competitive person. Sure. Like, and I believe that, like, you know, I played high school football as well. Our team was horrible. We won 6 games in 4 years. But I think that losing those games, like, made me who I am. Like, I'm very resilient, I would like to believe, because it's like when you go into halftime down 66 points, you have to somehow put on a smile and say, we're still going to win this game, even though you're going to lose 66-6. Mm-hmm. Like, there was just something special about that, where now I can just be like an eternal optimist. What's your kind of stance on when you think of youth sports and even high school, like keeping score, participation trophies? Like, I would just love to hear the psychology and your thoughts behind this.
So I'm a big fan of competition because it brings out the best in people, and winning and losing is part of life. And the sooner and that we can teach that, the more resilient children will be. Now, there's a way to teach it to a 4-year-old that looks different than a 14-year-old, of course. And so what are your expectations for the 4-year-old? But there's so much to competition that looks different than just if you got the ball through the hoop. So competition is being a good sportsman. It's being a good loser. That is a skill that we should teach, because that's part of life. There's fairness. When the referee calls something that they should or shouldn't call, how do you respect authority? Well, that would go a long way in society. So these are things that we shouldn't dilute. Sports is a great place for us to teach that. And I think good coaches and parents who are engaged know at what level their children can succeed and thrive in that. And sometimes it's more than what their child wants to do, and that's okay too. But I don't think we should dilute the competitive nature, because it teaches too many good life skills.
Yeah, I totally agree. And my big thing that I kind of tell the guy, like, wrestling is a brutal sport, right? Like, and a lot of times you have to like get pinned 30 times to get your first one, right? It's like you got to go out there in front of like your mom, God, and everyone in the stands and like get beat while wearing like a little singlet. Like, it's like a humbling experience until you get to be good.
That's right.
And I always say, like, just because you lose doesn't mean you're a loser. That's like, just because we lost doesn't mean you're a loser. Like, and it's like, that's a moment, like that's just a little blip on your timeline. It's like, how do we improve and go get better? Like, oh my gosh, I just, like, you're speaking my language of like, you just learn so much. And you honestly learn more, in my opinion, like through the losses about life and who you are as a person and your character and just like persevering. Like, I see this thing with kids. I hate to be like, I'm not that old, but I'm like, the kids these days. It's like,
get off my grass.
There's just so many like other things they could do. You know, it's like, so I do see this, like, that worries me just slightly of like, oh, like wrestling's really hard, I'm just going to go play Fortnite. Or wrestling's really hard, I'm going to join. There's a million things you can do, which is great. I love like the different opportunities to do all these different things. But with attention spans being so short, it's like, I'm constantly thinking about practice and activities. I'm like, was there something that slightly resembled a game today? And if not, like, we have to do one tomorrow. Or like, kids are going to get bored and like, oh, well, acting or the play or the musical or whatever is like always fun, and we're singing and dancing and having a good time. Like, I'd rather go do that than join the wrestling team and like get beat up for 2 hours a day. So I'll get off my soapbox there, but I just think youth sports. Were you ever a coach?
Yes.
Oh, what'd you coach?
I coached a losing volleyball team and a losing basketball team, junior high girls.
Oh boy. And that's just like already a fun time. And like, so we had I don't know if you know, but one of the latest IHSA official sanctioned sports is women's wrestling.
Yes.
So like last year it was a club sport, and I was the club coach as well. So I'm driving to a wrestling match, and you're talking about junior high girls. Like, I think just a different feel than like a high school wrestling team where I'm like, lock in, like, you're ready to go to war. They're like braiding each other's hair, and it's like, this boy gonna ask me to the homecoming dance or whatever. And like, that was how they got in the mindset. Yeah. And then after their matches, they would hug each other. And I was like, my number one rule with the boys, no hugging. It's not hugging. The girls were like, oh my gosh, you did so good. And I'm just like, it's cool to see the sportsmanship, and like, though it's the same sport, it's a different sport. Like, I just love it. So talk to me about your high school or your middle school volleyball team.
I will, but I'll tell you, when I got this job at the Fever, somebody said, oh, they have chapel before every game. And so Tamika always would go to chapel. I said, well, I'll go to chapel. I'm, love to think about things of God and have a moment before this fun game and this competitive game. I go into the chapel where we have a chaplain there, and they pray, and all of a sudden the opposing team walks in to the chapel. And I said to Tamika, why are they here? She goes, oh no, chapel's for both teams. And I said, oh, I won't be back. And I never went back.
No, you're a competitor.
I am.
Yeah, I love that. Like, I do think that, like, obviously you hit on it, right? It's like, there's a time to be competitive and there's a time to be a sportsman. And like, the pregame is like, it's very valuable. Like, no, I'm locked into, like, we're going to go to war right now.
That's right.
Well, talk to me about what you learned from coaching a junior high volleyball team.
Yeah, volleyball and basketball. But I think what I learned is what you're sharing about your coaching experience is that adaptability is important. And so if you're the grown-up in the room, your job is to be creative about how do you meet the needs of your students or your players. And it's going to look different, this team to the next team, boys to girls, sport to sport. But I do want to challenge coaches and parents and teachers to say, let's accept what this reality is, and how do we use our skill set and our experience and competencies to create an environment where these children will thrive. And so do we have to figure out a different way for them to play some games sometimes, or have more time to do their hair, or play a little bit of their video game before? Maybe we didn't grow up that way and we wouldn't choose it, and we're not sure if there's the same value of it. But the lasting value is for them to have a coach who says, I care about you as a person. I'm going to do the extra effort and extra work to try and make this meaningful. And sports should be enjoyable at young ages. So we'll figure that piece out.
I do think, there are a lot of, like, specifically like dads, I feel like they forget that, fifth grade basketball or fifth grade softball is supposed to be fun.
Yeah.
Like, fifth grade wrestling, like, our big thing is like, just keep them around the sport. Like, it's got to be fun and enjoyable, because when it gets to high school, it's going to become like, it's a job, right? It's like, it's a grind.
Yes.
But like, when you're a little kid, it's got to be like, you do this because it's fun.
You do, but still not diluting the truth of winning and losing. That is hard. And so what does fun? Well, I mean, winning's more fun than losing, if we want to talk about what's fun. But the culture you can create and the camaraderie and the team, there can be things that are fun outside of the winning and losing, because I just don't want people to dilute the power of competition. It's a very good thing.
Yeah, I totally agree. I love it. And I just... as a coach, it's like we're getting into, so November is when like wrestling season starts, and I've like been reading 11 Rings by Phil Jackson and a few of these other like books about like building a top caliber culture and all these fun things, and I'm super pumped. But I'd love to know, coach to coach, right? Like, what advice would you have for all the coaches out there of youth sports? Like, you're about to go in and you're pouring into the Marvella Project, and it's gonna 12th grade and under, like, so high school to middle school to elementary kids, like, if there are coaches out there listening, what advice would you give them of how they can make an impact in their young players' lives today?
Players, children, adults, what you do is oftentimes more important than what you say. One of the things that it's not always consistent, but I do believe that competitors have a drive and a motor that they want to get better. And so as a coach, if you break it down for whatever age group you're working with and you teach them the value of getting better at something, wow, what a discipline. What a great muscle memory to create in kids of just getting better. Will they all be great at dribbling with their, non-dominant hand? Maybe not. But can they get better at it? Of course they can. So that would be if every coach, every parent, no matter what age, if your kids are into sports or theater or any of these things, break something down. Give them something that they can get better at, because that will build a life of determination and skill.
I love that. And I think of like an easy, like how I think about doing stuff like that is like the goal setting type stuff, where it's almost like at my grandma's house. Every time I would, like once a month or whatever, there'd be like little marks, or maybe like once a year, every 6 months, we'd do the little like pencil marks.
Yes.
And it's like, okay, if you look at let's say you're a basketball team in 5th grade, you look at your worst player that like can't dribble. It's like, oh, well, they made it 10 feet. They made it from the free throw line to the baseline. But like by the end of the season, if they can dribble with their left hand all the way to half court, it's like that's an easy way for them to like track the progress. And it's like you almost gamify the little, the little things of like, oh, you got so much better. You got a whole basketball court better at dribbling this year.
Yes.
Or you got, you used to make 3 free throws in a row. Now you can make 10 free throws in a row, or whatever it is. Like we do a big like, hey, here are like 3 goals that I want to accomplish this year. And you should try to make them like quantifiable, where it's like, I want to have this many wins, or I want to like, whatever, like lift this much weight or do this much, like GPA, all things like that. And I think that that's a really good way. And it doesn't always have to be like the wins or loss. And it's honestly more impactful when it's like not necessarily just like, we want to have a 500 record this year. And it's like, yes, of course, I know that one. But it's like, if so-and-so's like, well, I want to run the sprint in less than or 2 seconds faster than I did at the beginning of the season, or whatever it is.
Yes.
I think those things are super powerful.
Yeah, but you have to have a plan for it. So, setting a goal without a plan is a wish. Adam Scott talks about in Atomic Habits. There's a line in his book, I think it's really something I hang on to, and it says, when you set a goal and you advance it, you accomplish something, you're casting a vote for the person you want to be. So you get up today and you do 5 push-ups. Should you do 20 push-ups? Maybe, but you did 5 today. You're casting a vote for the person you want to be. And wow, what a great thing that we can use that sports to teach kids how to cast a vote for the people that they want to be. And it's a great platform.
I love it. I could talk youth sports literally all day. I do want to kind of like go back and just talk, right? So your time at the Fever has come to an end because you're on doing this new, fun, exciting chapter empowering women's sports across not only Indiana, but the nation.
That's
400,000, like the impact of young female athletes. That's going to be, I'm super pumped to follow along there. But when you think back about the last 5 years with the Fever, what do you hope your legacy is that you left there?
I hope that my legacy of the 5 years that I was there was that, one, I believed in women's sports. I believed in the power of our fans. And I engaged our city to accomplish things that people weren't sure we could accomplish. And so, I'm very bullish on Indianapolis and the people that make this city work, for them to all come around the Fever all these years, for me to sit in that chair for 5 years to say, let's transform this franchise, and we can't do it alone. And so when I look back on my legacy, I think, well, maybe we were able to put our hand and some talent and some energy and effort to keeping a franchise that our city and our fans could be proud of as we were going through this transition.
I love that. I know I've been a Fever fan for the last year or so, but I can definitely tell like the impact that you've had, and
Thank you.
And I'm super excited. I think the Marvella Project is in very, very good hands, especially
you.
after this conversation. Holy cow!
Thank you.
I'm jazzed up. I'm bullish on women's sports,
Thank you.
especially in Indiana being the headquarter for women's.
That's right.
Used to be the amateur sports capital.
Yep.
Now we're going to be the headquarter for women's sports.
Yes.
I love that. I do want to go. The last thing about Fever, as you think back to the past 5 years, what are like 2 or 3 of your favorite moments, like all-time moments that were just like, man, that's going to forever be ingrained?
I will not forget the little girls show up in their jerseys with their basketballs for autographs. And that wasn't just this year. It was more this year for sure. But just the little girls, because what it reminds me of is the saying, if you can see it, you can be it. The fact that our city has put forward a women's professional basketball team for 25 seasons meant that little girls could see themselves on a path, whether it's on the court or my coaches or our front office. So that will always stay with me. And all the thank you notes and the cute cards that girls and kids would send about their moment, their experience at the Fever, I think that will be something I will always remember.
When it comes to the future of the Fever, next season and beyond, what are you most excited about?
Well, the future's so bright for the Fever. To get into the playoffs at the 6th seed this year, my expectation is that we'll see many more years of that deep playoff run. And the new leadership team, Kelly Kroskoff's the new president. She was the original. She started the league.
Oh.
And so she was with the Fever for 20 years before she went over to the Pacers for 5 years as an assistant GM. She's come back to be the president. That's a wonderful opportunity for the person who created the league now to have the skill set to take the team to the next level. She just hired Amber Cox as her GM and chief operating officer. That's brain gain in Indiana that we like to talk about. So we're bringing in talent from Dallas, and Amber's terrific. And so I'm expecting a more robust future for the Fever as they go deeper into the playoffs.
I love that. We won't say we're guaranteeing a WNBA championship, but we're not taking it off the table.
We would never take it off the table.
We're gonna hoist the trophy
Let's
here
do
in the Circle City.
That's right.
Okay, I do have one fun question.
Okay.
Well, I have a bunch of fun questions as we kind of wrap up. These are all these will be a little more fast paced or whatever, but like, I do want to know, what's the one thing that Indiana needs to know about Caitlin Clark that they might not already know?
Boy, there's so much out there about Caitlin Clark, isn't there?
I know, but it's like the media, like there's so much out there from people that don't actually know her and like have never just like sat down and hung out. And you said like the first day, it's like, oh, she's like from Iowa and like very generous and humble and all these things that we see, also an ultimate competitor.
Yes.
But I'd love to know, it's like from someone who sat down and been in the room and like, what should we know?
Well, you need to ask Caitlin what they ought to know. But what I will tell you about Caitlin, and I've had the pleasure of having a front row seat to watching her rookie career, she's humble, and that's an interesting mix to be such a powerhouse player, so talented, and to have humility along the way. And you watch it when she gets acknowledged or awards, and you could just see it in her face. But then what I also see in her humility is how she'll walk off the court after signing some autographs, and there'll be some little girl there that Caitlin might not have spotted right away, and then she catches her eye and she goes right back to sign that autograph. So I think Caitlin takes her job very seriously. She takes herself less seriously, and it demonstrates through her humility.
I love that. And I just think like as the season kind of got going, I was like, man, I can't imagine being 22, 23, however old she might be, like the pressure. I won't say glad the season got off to like a little bit slower of a start, but it's like it takes a lot of the pressure away when you're like, man, just go out there and be be a young professional. Like no one was phenomenal their first job, whether it's an athlete or like, and having the expectation that all of a sudden like a rookie is going to come in and like I just can't imagine it's like a young person with that much pressure. And I've loved to see the city and everyone kind of step up and like be there and be like, it's okay, like we're gonna figure it all out, and it clearly shows in the results of this season.
Sure. And she was great in her first job. She just needed a few weeks for everybody to figure it all out.
Yeah, phenomenal. Okay, so now we have the lightning round where I'm just gonna have a couple quick hitting questions here. First question: Hinkle or Gainbridge? Which stadium is just like you'd rather watch a game in?
Cambridge.
There we go. I love that. There is a historic Hinkle Fieldhouse. I love
it, and I love it for the right game. So my family and I will spend a lot of time at Hinkle for the college basketball. We're big fans, and so that feels so good, and you're just nostalgic, and you feel like you're really part of it. But I'm really proud of Gainbridge.
Heck yeah! What's your favorite concession snack when you're at a Fever game?
Oh my word, those potato chips they just get me.
Potato chips?
The potato chips, and those are sometimes with the catering, and then I can hardly turn my head from the Ben's pretzels.
Oof.
Out of South Bend.
Yeah.
With cinnamon.
Those are good ones.
They are.
I love that. Okay, what's the best halftime show you've ever seen at Gainbridge?
I love those. I love the dunking team, the Pacers. They do it for the Pacers and for us. They're so amazing. And then the dogs are just, hilarious. But the one I can't watch is the woman who climbs up on top of every single thing, and she's spinning, her baton as she's 40 feet off the floor, and it stresses me out. So I just can't watch.
Have you seen, I think she's called Red Panda, where she has like the little bowls and like stacks them, throws them up?
Can't.
Crazy.
Nope, can't
That's
watch
wild to me. Okay, when you think of what level of sport is your favorite, high school, college, or professional basketball?
Do love, of course, watching the Fever. I'm a college sports fan. I love everything about that.
Who's your team?
IU.
Yes. All right. I love that.
And Notre Dame for my husband.
Okay. That's fine.
Also good.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. And IU football right now is.
How about it?
They look good.
Yes. Yeah, I got my master's from IU, so
yeah.
I'm.
What does Coach Sig says? He says, I win. Google me. Like, that's hilarious. Okay, now we have our Younger Years segment. So this question is brought to you by our friends at Orr Fellowship. They're a great organization here in Indiana, helping develop the next generation of young business leaders and entrepreneurs. So Allison, what advice would you give to your 22-year-old self?
I would give my 22-year-old self the advice that I took as a 22-year-old, and that is to be in the room. Show up for every single thing you can. Volunteer where you can. Take advantage of opportunities when they come to you. And even if you don't see that this opportunity I mean, I was, a school teacher, was a lifeguard and swim instructor in the summers. Each thing that I would say yes to and every opportunity I took would always lead to something valuable, a friendship, a work relationship, a new job. And so just say yes.
I love that. I think that's great advice. And it's like sometimes you say yes blindly and you have no idea what's going to come. But like when you think of from school teacher to president and COO of the Indiana Fever, like that's a wild trajectory.
Worked at the Pentagon, worked at the White House. I mean, these are the things that happen when you say yes.
Could you imagine like when you were coming out of undergrad, you're going to be a school teacher that like you'd be in the White House or you'd be running a basketball organization?
Flying over Iraq during a war in a war zone? No, not at all.
Okay, we're going to need episode 2 to get into all of that. Holy smokes. And as we wrap out, I always have some fun Indiana questions. So what's something the world needs to know about Indiana?
The people are our secret sauce. So when I moved here to Indianapolis, I didn't know anybody, and I was starting WGU Indiana and knew that I needed to meet people to help us build the brand so more people could get their master's and bachelor's degree and be successful. My first year here, in 365 days, I met with 214 people. 214 people. And that only happened because I would meet with you today and you'd say, oh, you should meet Barbara tomorrow. And Barbara would tell me I should meet Deborah the next day. That's the secret sauce of Indiana, is that the people here are all in to help the other people.
I love that. And it's so true. And you hear it and it's like, especially I love to hear it from people who are not originally from Indiana and come from outside. And it's like, no, like there's a reason like you put roots down and stay here. And it's like you build this insane network of really, really impactful people very quickly.
Yes.
And I love it. I mean, it's been the truth for me, but again, I'm a lifelong Hoosier. So I love that. That's great. What is a hidden gem in Indiana?
We have the great pleasure of being on the Indiana Destination Development Corporation, serving under Elaine Beadle, and we have all of these trails, the golf trail, the hiking trail, the basketball trail, the pork tenderloin trail. You can go to the website and you will be, probably surprised by all of the wonderful things that we have. But I have loyalty to the dunes. So I grew up in Northwest Indiana and lived in Portage, Ogden Dunes on Lake Michigan, and the dunes are just breathtaking and spectacular.
Oh, I love it. And it's like now a national park.
Yes,
right.
it
Like
is.
as of I don't know, a couple of years back.
That's right.
I love it, and it's so beautiful. And you almost like show a picture of that, and you can't believe they're like, wait, what?
Yes.
So I don't know if you heard about The Duel, the movie that was shot here or filmed here. Mm-hmm. They did a world premiere. One of the main actors was Dylan Sprouse. He's from The Sweet Life of Zack and Cody, if you've heard of that. Yeah. So they filmed 80% of it in Indiana.
Okay.
And they set up on the beach up at Lake Michigan and made it look like California. And you couldn't even tell. Again, they made it look like it's set in LA or wherever. It was so cool. It made me super pumped.
That's beautiful.
Okay, final question for you. Who is a Hoosier we need to keep on our radar?
Boy, there are so many. I'm really inspired. I get the chance to hang out with a lot of people who are in their 20s, 30s, and 40s, and I do that on purpose because it keeps me motivated and inspired. There are just so many Hoosiers to keep your eye on. But right now, I would say keep your eye on Caitlin Clark.
Oh, yes, absolutely. I'm excited to see her take a little, have a little break from, basketball. Obviously, you're still playing and doing all this stuff, but just breathe for a little bit for the first time in what's probably over a year,
More than that, coming out of college.
Yeah,
right,
wow.
nonstop.
And maybe see you around the city, hanging out,
That's right.
having a good time. I love that.
Yes.
Thank you so much for being a guest today. It was so awesome to hear not only about all the cool stuff with the Fever, but also about what you're doing with the Marvella Project and the impact that you have already made and will continue to make in young female athletes' lives. I'm super pumped to follow along here, and I'm pumped to have individuals like you spearheading this initiative to make Indiana the headquarters for women's sports.
Thank you.
I think it's so awesome, and I'm super excited for the Indy Ignited as well to have their inaugural season and for Fever and all the fun things.
It's good, and thank you for being a coach. That's an important piece of your story.
I love it. It's literally my favorite thing. If people want to find you or support what you're doing, where can they do that at?
Marvella website would be the place to go.
Heck yeah. I love it. Thank you so much. And we're going to have a whole nother deep dive into what overseas and White House and all those fun things. We'll have that on part 2. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Get In. If you liked what you heard, make sure you leave us a review wherever you listen to podcasts. This show is made possible by our friends up at Sweetwater. Whether you're trying to start your own podcast or looking to take your show to the next level, make sure you check out sweetwater.com for all your creator needs. If you want exclusive behind the scenes content on all things Indiana, make sure you follow me on Instagram and TikTok at Nate Spangle. Thank you for being part of what makes the Hoosier State so amazing. We'll see you next week here on Get In.